Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. This channel is Moyna Bass Fishes. I am Jim Moyna, professional bass fisherman, and this year the fish really are not respecting that title, not one bit. So this video is about the 2024 MLF Toyota Series tournament that I just finished fishing on Lake of the Ozarks. Okay, so today is actually Sunday. Yesterday, which was Saturday, was the top 25 got the fish. The rest, I was eliminated because I finished 54th place out of 150. So my last day of fishing was on Friday. So I fished Thursday, Friday, top 25 on Saturday, and now today's Sunday morning. So, and also welcome to the channel of harsh lighting. Yes, we have some harsh lighting conditions this morning. Enough said. I guess let's just get to the whole goal. Why was I at Lake of the Ozarks fishing in the Plains Division tournament when I haven't fished any of the other tournaments in that division? It's because they have what's called the wild card division, and I wanted to go down there to basically, in essence, I wanted to go down there, have a good finish. That way I could throw out one of my other finishes from earlier this year and use the points I get at Lake of the Ozarks to improve my point total in the standings. So they take the top 25 in what's called the wild card standings. They take the top 25 and they move on to the championship. It looks like I'm going to miss that by just a few points. I was on the points. I was looking at the point standings this morning, and I know they did not have my correct total there, which is highly unusual. It's like first time I've ever experienced this. So tomorrow I'm not gonna bother the tournament director, Mark McWaugh, today on a Sunday. Tournament directors are on call 24 hours a day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But you know, this can wait till tomorrow. Even though I'm kind of curious, but I really don't think I mean, my total's wrong. I should have. Because basically what they didn't do is they didn't take my points from Lake of the Ozarks and use those points and throw out the points that I had at Lake Eufaula when I was there for that Toyota tournament. Now I did good in the Bassmaster Lake Eufaula tournament, but like 72nd in the Bassmaster one. So, so they it did not reflect that replacement. But even with that replacement done, it looks like I'm going to be just like 6 points short, unless if there's other mistakes in point totals. So, but that's a conversation with Mark tomorrow. All right, so let's get into my strategy. If you watched any of my practice videos, you saw a guy, which would be me, just clueless. Okay, I was not catching much, catching very little, having very little success, and in fact, I felt like I didn't know what to look for. I didn't know what to key on, and it was just very frustrating. I was very rattled by the whole practice experience, but you know, you just have to frickin', you know, you just got to just dig through it. You know, being a pro at 59 years old and being in this since 1995, fishing nationally like this, you just know that you just got to frickin' just, you know, forget about the insuccess or the failures of practice. Not forget them, but don't dwell on it. Just look at, okay, what did work? And let's see if we can't start with that and build with it. So that's what I did. So when it came down to tournament morning, I decided I was going to fish close by. The takeoff was out of what they call the PB2 boat launch. So I decided I was going to fish close by. And that was part of my strategy. That would give me the maximum amount of time to finally figure out some kind of way to catch a fish. Plus, I have a co-angler, he's going to be casting baits that maybe I haven't thrown. So maybe I can learn something from him or whatever, but I can learn. Maybe I can learn something. It's my last chance to finally come up with a pattern, and I want the most amount of time to do that. So I just figured if I fish within 5 miles of takeoff, there's plenty of variety of stuff to do in that 5-mile zone. So that was part of my strategy. The little bit of success I did have in, and let me just back up. PB2 is a known site for tournaments. So every tournament, people weigh their fish there, and so many fish are released in that area. Yes, I know that's kind of a cheesy strategy, but believe me, the number of pros, I'm not the only one that does that. The number of pros, I mean, I'm talking the best in the business that utilize that same strategy at times. I'm not the only one. Just about every pro you can imagine has caught released fish. And I'm talking the best in the business. Maybe not every one of them, because some of them maybe just will not do it. But a huge majority have taken this approach. So anyways, so the one little bit of success I had, and I did practice around that area, and didn't catch a whole lot, but I had one day of practice where I had about 7 or 8 keeper bites, where some of them got in the boat, some of them didn't. So I figured, all right, this is where maybe I can make it happen, and it was all with topwaters, okay? So, and I experimented with different topwaters in practice. I fished whopper ploppers, walking baits, and wake baits, pretty much through those 3 different colors and different sizes in those different styles. And what I came up with were 3 baits that I was going to use in topwaters. I didn't know which one was going to be better than the other. And it seems like you can get bit on a variety of topwaters, but the problem, and this was a big problem, was the bass were slapping at the topwater. They're ramming it. They weren't coming up mouth open, eating the bait. They're coming up just pounding it with their face, with their mouths closed in a lot of cases. So, so through the course of practice, I found that this bait right here was my best bait, where I had the least amount of that type of strike, where they weren't like mouth open, sucking it in kind of a strike. And that was this bait right here. This is a walking bait. That's what they call the Hedden Zaraspook Jr. They're not a sponsor of mine. I shouldn't even mention people that don't sponsor me, but anyways, I did. So it'd be this black one right there. So but they still, and this is what I learned through 2 days of fishing out there in that area. And that's not the only bait. So, all right, so we'll go through the baits. So it was that one that you just saw. Now this is the regular Hedden Zaraspook. Now I did not have a black one, but I had this one, and I didn't throw this as much in practice, but I had some good fish grabs on it, so that was a color. But I also had a few bump it and smash it, headbutt it in practice. So that, and then this is the wake bait that I decided to use. That's called a Depths Buzz Jet. That's an addictive bait, man. It's a fun bait to fish, but it seems like it always disappoints me in competition. I'll get fish to grab it in practice, and some nice ones, or when I'm fun fishing. But man, anytime money's on the line, the fish are nowhere to be seen. So But now let's kind of walk you through the day of each day, all right? So the first morning, I just went to a shoreline just half a mile away and just started throwing this. And I threw it a bunch, wasn't working. So then I started, I caught a bunch of small fish in practice on jerk baits. I caught some on swim baits, small fish, undersized ones I'm talking about. So I wasn't 100% in on the topwater at that point right away in the morning. And we also mentioned we had about an hour fog delay, maybe slightly more, in that first morning. So anyhow, so I got to my spot, fished for like 45 minutes, rotating through jerk baits, this bait, and picked up my walking bait too at times, right there. And it wasn't until about 45 minutes into the morning that I finally caught a fish, and it happened to be on this. So now that was the confidence builder I needed. That showed me right there that, okay, I can catch fish on that thing. So now I was going to okay, I'm going to commit to this thing hard and forget those other baits for like the next 30 minutes. And really, it was only about 10 minutes later I caught my first keeper. And then maybe 20 minutes later I caught my second keeper. And they were both largemouth. So now I'm pretty excited. And they ate the bait. They came up, mouth open, drilled it, and had good hooks in it, got into the boat. All right, so then, gosh, where did keeper number 3 come from? And I hadn't picked up the trolling motor yet. I just kept going down the shoreline. A lot of you guys might ask, well, what about a whopper plopper? Because the lake's known for a whopper plopper bite. That's another topwater. It's more of it has a tallywhacker kind of a tail to it. My success with that bait in practice I did not get as much action on that bait, and I tried different colors in that, including black, and it just wasn't working as good for me as these other baits. But like I said, I wasn't having much luck on anything to begin with, so maybe I just didn't have enough data points to really know. But in other words, let me just say this: I never even pulled it out of the rod locker. Well, actually, I did on day 1, but I never even threw it. Day 2, I never even pulled it out of the rod locker. So, all right, so I got 2 fish in the boat. We're a couple hours into the tournament morning now. And, yeah, so I finally pull up the trolling motor, run maybe a half mile to another shoreline, and catch a third one almost immediately. So, all right, that's cool. Then probably about another half hour later, I hook up on a fish, and it's my biggest one. And once you know it, I'm absolutely plagued by losing my biggest fish of the day or the tournament. And sure enough, just beyond the reach of the net, the fish throws the bait. It would have been my biggest one for the day. I didn't have a big bag. I had 9 pounds 6 ounces the first day. But this was like a 2.5 pounder, okay? So anyhow, lose that one. And then literally maybe, I don't know, another 10, 15 minutes later, I catch a spotted bass, which was like 12.5 inches. For this tournament, you could weigh in spotted bass that were 12 inches or bigger, or you could weigh in largemouth or smallmouth, but they always had to be 15 inches or bigger. So anyway, so now I have 3, by the way, that third fish I caught was a largemouth. So I have 3 largemouths and this 1 spotted bass. So now I keep throwing. And at this point I am just hard exclusively on this bait, okay? And then finally, it must have been about 11 o'clock, 11:30, where I get my 5th fish. and it's a largemouth. And so now it's probably 11:30, maybe noon. I got a 3:15 check-in, so I still got over 3 hours to fish. And I just keep hopping banks. And a lot of these banks I've never even, the starting bank, I'd fished that in practice. But actually everything else that after that, everything else was just brand new stuff I haven't even looked at, I haven't even tried. And so I just kept trying new places. All right, new banks, new stretches, and it was getting tough. And I was going, and I wasn't getting bites. I wasn't generating bites. And then my co-angler catches his first fish. It's a largemouth, and that's on a spinnerbait. So I'm like, okay, well, that's cool. He just caught one on a spinnerbait. But I'm going to stick with my topwater. Well, it wasn't long after that, maybe another 20, 25 minutes later, a half hour maybe, he catches a second one on a spinnerbait. So now I do have a spinnerbait tied up, but not the one like his. So I take off the one I have, which I haven't thrown at all, put on a spinnerbait similar to his. You know, I'm looking at his blade configuration. It's a double willow. The biggest blades maybe like a size 4, the other ones maybe size 3. You know, so not like really monster blades, kind of the small to mid-size. It was a white and chartreuse skirt, so I pick up a white and chartreuse spinnerbait with a similar blade combination. And I start throwing that. And I'm throwing it a lot, throwing it. I catch a few non-keepers. But he's not catching anymore. I'm not catching anymore. So I go back to topwater. So now I'm starting to mix in this one, just for the heck of it. And it gets to me with about a half hour of the day left. And once you know what, a really good one, freaking just does one of those weak hits on it. I wouldn't say weak. It was aggressive, but it was just one of those hits where he didn't open his mouth and eat it. He just came up and just hit it with his face or whatever, and it was a decent fish. It wasn't a 4-pounder. It may not even been a 3-pounder. It could have been a 3-pounder. But it was the size of, it was for sure a keeper, largemouth. You know, probably, you know, in the 16 to 18, 19 at the most, probably not 19, 16 to 18 pound, 16 to 18 inch range. But that was the last bite I had of the day. So I weighed 9.6 for my total. So now day 2 comes and it's overcast. So my strategy again is going to be to, and I didn't know this till I kind of held off on this decision till the next morning, and I'm like, you know what? There's enough fish around here. It's going to be overcast most of the day, and I could probably generate bites on these topwaters all day. So that was the plan. So again, I started on the same stretch I started on day 1. After about 45 minutes to an hour of that, maybe an hour and a half, I've got 2 largemouths in the well. They're not big. One's probably 15 and a quarter, one's about 16, maybe a little more than 16 and a half. Can't remember exactly. So I get those 2. Then we go to another stretch. And this is a brand new stretch. I haven't even fished this one yet. So I go there, and immediately, and by the way, those first 2 I caught were on this, and they were great, great blow, or you know, not great, but they were the eating kind of blow-ups. And let me just back up. Sorry. Now I mentioned I had that one hit. I mentioned I had that one hit this topwater late in the day on day 1. I was mistaken in saying that was my last hit because I I did pull up on one more spot with just like 5 to 10, probably about 10 minutes to fish. And I decided to go back to this for the last 10 minutes. And I had a good one come up on this and 2 little ones come up on this. And literally that was the most action I had in like the last couple of hours. Because it had just gone dead. And this is what, and this is important. When this bait went dead on day 1, where they quit going for it, the wind came up at the same time. I mean, the wind came up, and then from there on, I had a hard time catching fish, getting any action on this at all. So that's when my coiler caught those fish on the spinnerbait. So that's when that was working. And that's why I went to this, because it stands out in the ripples a little better. Why is there a truck right there? So that was why I made that move. But also the condition, not only did the wind change, but as I was progressively working my way back up that Grand Glaze Creek arm, the watercolor was getting dirtier and dirtier and dirtier. So for whatever reason, so maybe it was the wind, maybe it was the dirtier water, but whatever, as I worked my way back there on day 1, I quit having action. The action slowed. So now this is important. So when I pulled up on my last spot on day 1 with, like, for 10 minutes, it was back towards takeoff where the water was more clear. And in that last, I had 3 bites on this, including one good one that did that just lame ass headbutt. And those other little ones didn't get it either. But that was kind of eye-opening to me. I'm like, so maybe it wasn't the wind, maybe it was the water clarity, or maybe it was just the distance back in the creek, something. Didn't know for sure. So anyways, so now let's go back to day 2 now. Sorry I had to back up. Sorry this is a little spread out, but I hope you guys are sticking with me here. All right. So I go to my second stretch, which I haven't been on. First cast, I catch one on this. It's a 13.5-inch spotted bass. It probably weighs 1.25 pounds, but it's a third fish. So then I start working down that stretch, and spotted bass after spotted bass are coming up and just knocking this thing, batting it, ramming it without getting hit. A lot of them are non-keepers, but some of them are keepers. And it's pissing me off. Okay? It is pissing me off. So, but I'm working down the stretch, and then a freaking really big, not really, really big, but the best bite I've had, best bite I've seen practically all week, freaking takes this thing, or hits it, and he misses it. And I didn't set the hook, he misses it, and I just keep walking the bait, and 3 feet further, he drills it again, and I get a hook in that fish, and that hook is in that fish for about 1.5 seconds, and it's off. Oh my God. That just hurt bad. It was the biggest bite I had of the frickin' whole time I was there. And I saw him, because he grabbed it. The second time he grabbed it, I reeled and pulled back. The whole fish went sideways to me where I could see how long he was. And it was like it might have been like a 3.5 pounder. It was probably right in that range. And had him for about a second and a half, and he was gone. Heartbreaker. So I'm like, whatever, I'll throw back in there again. Throw back in there once, nothing, throw back in there, boom! A hit! I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I got him again! It's a 12.5-inch spotted bass. It counts, it goes in live well, but I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. I'll take it. Because so that's only my fourth one. And we're probably halfway through the day at this point. So, anyhow, so anyways, we keep fishing and fishing and fishing, and that stretch is done. Try some new stretches, nothing. So then I go to the stretch where on day one, it was my last stretch where I had a good blow up and a couple short ones. And literally I haven't picked in the way, and by the way, we've had some chop on the water now for a while. So that black one is, that little black one's bringing up fish to hit it, but I don't know if it's the chop, where with that chop, they're just not getting a good bead on the bait or what. You know, they're just not getting it. I'm having all these spotted bass knock it around, swipe at it, and that big largemouth didn't get it very good. And so finally, I pull up to this other spot, and I'm in the wind, and it's choppy. And I'm like, you know what? Let's go to this big one. Maybe they'll just see this one better in the chop. And second cast, I catch a 3-pounder on this thing, and I'm like, yes, I've unlocked the key. I've unlocked the lake. Right? I've unlocked the key. We're gonna frickin' just mop up this place. Fish with that bait for like the next hour and a half without putting it down. I think I might have caught a little one, maybe had another little one boil on it, and that was it. That was it. So I get to the point now where I'm as far back in the creek as I want to go, because yesterday, the further back I went, it seemed like the less action. So now I'm going the other way. And I'm throwing this. And now, because I'm on a bank where in practice I had some success with this, I'm like, all right, let's throw this into the play. Maybe they'll hit this better. No, I had fish come up on this, boil on it, slap it, and I'm pretty sure these were spotted bass, which it seemed like the spotted bass had more of a tendency to exhibit that kind of behavior. So, but that's what's happening. I'm just not connecting with nothing. I'm having action. It's still overcast. And I'm on a calm shoreline. This is a calm shoreline that's wind protected. And I'm still having this problem. But whatever, you just got to keep marching, man. Just keep marching. So I'm like, well, let's go try that bank over there. I haven't fished it ever in my life. Let's go over there. And I pick up this bait. And I'm throwing this. And because it's calm, I'm thinking, you know, I'll throw this and they'll get a good bead on it. Well, no, I have a good one boil on this. I mean, I threw it in there right next to the rocks on shore, and literally threw it in there, and after walked it maybe 2 times, all of a sudden it was just a nice splash on it. Certainly a nice keeper fish of either spotted bass or largemouth. And of course that one did get hooked. So then in disgust, I put that, well, I throw back in there a couple more times. Nothing. And what I learned in practice is when I have fish boil and miss on it, there was nothing I could throw back on them and have the same fish grab it again. So to me, it was just, so by the tournament time, it just made sense to just throw the same thing back in there and maybe a different fish will bite it, like which happened earlier in that day. But it didn't matter if I threw an eco rig in there or a little swim bait or a jig or a shaky head. It didn't freaking matter. So I threw this back in there, nothing, threw it a few more times, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to go back to this. And probably 5 minutes later, another freaking nice freaking strike on this, and I got this one hooked up, and I get it in the boat. It's hooked barely, it's hooked on the last hook, barely on the outer part of, I mean, in his mouth, but like right at his outer lip, or is it right on his inner lip, I guess it would be. But it was a nice, like 2.25 pound spotted bass. So now I'm like, all right, we're locking this in my hand for the next hour, right? And so we finish off that shoreline until it sucks. I'm like, okay, we'll go over to that shoreline. Go over to another shoreline. Never fished in my life. Go over there, fish. Throw this thing up to a big rock on shore. Well, the rock's in the water, but close to shore. Throw it in there a second time, and all of a sudden another big bite, just like the one I had with that spotted bass. And I don't hook, and I see the fish. And it's probably bigger than the fish that I just, the previous fish I caught. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, no. It was probably like a 2.25 pounder. I'm like, no. And it'd been so sweet to call out that tiny spotted bass that was 13.5 inches, but I wasn't able to. So now I've really got this locked in my hands. And I fished for like another hour plus without anything happening. Maybe, I caught a couple small ones. Enough, but. So now, I'm like, what do I do? So now it's getting later in the day. Time's ticking down. Now it's time to go revisit some of the banks that worked. And the first bank I go to, nothing. And we're counting down. We're getting down to like an hour and a half left. So now I go to my starting bank, which worked on day one. And I revisited on day one, by the way, without having any action the second time through. But now I'm going to revisit it again. It's still overcast. And I decide I'm going to use this bait because there's a little bit of a chop. And I'm like, I really could use a good one. So bigger bait, bigger fish, maybe. Certainly you catch big fish on little baits, but my biggest fish of the day had been on this. And also in practice, I'd caught a couple on this, like in the kind of a late afternoon period. So I'm like, well, maybe they'll commit to this late in the day. Sure enough, I mean, there was very little action on that bank, but I had one good, like 3-pounder come up on it, close, about 20 feet up from the boat. And I saw him. I'm walking the bait, and I'm like, oh, dang, there's like a big shadow behind that thing. So then I give it a couple more twitches, and he just, all of a sudden, he just freaking rockets right to it, drills it, doesn't get hooked. That sucked. So anyways, worked around the rest of that bank. Nothing. So then I go back to the bank where I caught my biggest one of the day on this. And it's really choppy there now because the wind is stronger in the later in the afternoon now. And I got a 4:15 check-in. Go to that bank. Nothing. That's a shorter stretch. It doesn't take as much time. Nothing. So now literally I got like maybe one more bank to go to. And I'm like, you know what? Let's go to the place where I had 2 baits, 2 fish on this in that late afternoon period in practice. So I go over there, and I hadn't fished it yet, period. I didn't fish it day one. I didn't fish it yet on day 2. And it was farther back in the Grand Glaze arm, so I had to make a little bit of run to get back there. Go back there, and fish. And really, this is the last area I'm going to fish because there ain't a whole lot of time to do much else. So I'm fishing, nothing. And I kind of work through this, what I consider the sweet area. And then I make a cast over this dock, and a freaking big fucking, a big freaking splash on the bait. and I don't hook it. I mean, it was a good fish. I mean, I'm not saying it was a 5-pounder, but it could have, I mean, I'm sure it was at least 2.5. It could have been a 4-pounder. It was a good fish. Oh my God, I didn't hook it. It never got hooked. So of course I throw over there a bunch more times. Nothing. Throw a jig over there. Nothing. Swim bait. Nothing. And then I just continue down the shoreline until time's out. I got to run in and I'm done. Weighed 10 pounds, 10 ounces. I still had that freaking 13.5-inch, 1.25-pound spotted bass in my bag. So many opportunities to upgrade from that thing. It was a story of my year, just losing the big ones. I mean, if I look back, like I said, I think I missed it by just a few points making this wild card qualifier. And if I look back at Rayburn, one of the tournaments I fished to try to make this Toyota Championships, my two biggest bass in that tournament, the two biggest ones I hooked up, I had them both just beyond the net, both of them. One was like a 7, the other was like a 5. Either one of those would have gave me a whole bunch of points. And I didn't get either one of them in the boat. It's just, and I mean, there are other tournaments as well throughout the year, just the big ones. It was just one of those years, man. You know, you find schools of fish, they move. You know, come tournament time, they move. You try to relocate them, you can't. You get to weigh in. Guys that found schools of fish, they were still right where they left them. Or they just moved a little bit and relocated them. I don't know. That wasn't happening for me. But anyways, let's talk about the kind of banks that worked for me for what I was doing. It seemed like the steeper the bank, the steep banks were better. And you wanted the broken rock anywhere from like this size, you know, mix in like one as, you know, as far as my my arm span, mix in a few of those here and there. But a bunch of rocks like this in this size range, that seemed to be what they liked. If it was just kind of a plain sand kind of or a small gravel kind of a shallow area, and I was just fishing shoreline. And if in a more gradual slope, that wasn't working for me. It had to be that steeper. Now, if it was a straight wall, like a sheer limestone or whatever it is, straight wall where it goes straight down to like 15 foot of water, that didn't really work unless if there was like a little slide, a slide, like a collapse of rocks off of that cliff down into the water. That was your chance where you might catch one along that type of a wall. But those were the areas I was kind of looking for, and there was a mixture of spotted bass and largemouth. It wasn't the winning pattern because, let's talk about that. So I watched, I didn't watch it. I listened to the live broadcast of the weigh-in while I was driving home to Minnesota. And so there's 25 guys, and it was jig this, jig that, swim jig this, flip and jig that. So some kind of combination of just flipping a jig or maybe swimming the jig on docks and laydowns. Exactly what Randy Blaukat discussed in his video. That was the predominant pattern. Now, you heard a little chirping about top waters, but that seemed like total secondary. You heard a little, you did, now this was probably the next best, most common thing was a shaky head. That was probably number 2. Jig on docks first, shaky head second on docks. Maybe a brush pile. One guy talked about brush piling with a shaky head. A tiny bit of chatter about brush piles, though. I never caught a keeper out of a brush pile in practice, and I threw tons of baits. And there's all kinds of brush piles all over the place that you can find on your Lowrance Active Target or whatever brand you're using. I never could catch but little ones out of it, so that's why I abandoned that situation. So yeah, so that was, and that's what the winner, Jared Littner, he talked about keying on dock. He felt like he had key docks, and sounded like he did. It sounds like he would. I'm not sure he was. I think he had a jig in his hand for a lot of them. Some of these guys, you know, they might cast a swimming bait or chatterbait or something off the ends of them as they go around a dock, and maybe pick up. There were fish on the ends of docks, so lots of little ones. And in practice, I had a couple good bites off the ends of some of these docks that, you know, stuck out over deep water, but I kind of gave up on that pattern. So, but anyways, that's it. That's my story from Lake of the Ozarks. Didn't turn out how I wanted by any means. It was a bust. I didn't make the money. I didn't make the Toyota Series Championship, it looks like, unless if there was, I mean, I already talked about that. So thanks for watching. This got a little lengthy, a little windy. Thanks for putting up with the harsh lighting out here in this parking lot. Beautiful day here in Minnesota. My gosh, it's just, you cannot beat this in Minnesota this time of year. Thanks for watching, guys. Over and out.